All right. Welcome to Be the Market Expert. And I think the first thing that let's, go through and look at it. We're on the 14th vote on the government shutdown. You guys are on day 35 of this government shutdown. And really the contention point at this junction that we're in is what I think that we would affectionately call Obamacare, right? This is around health benefits. Um, and so what we're seeing right now is the Democratic Party is holding out on their votes with the intent to get some verbiage around Obamacare put into the current resolution. And the Republicans say that, hey, no, we'll revisit this at a later point. We promise. And that's kind of where the standstill is now. So we are sitting about five votes away from the bill passing. I think there's three Democrats currently that have voted yes on passing the bill, and so the resolution needs five more. I think the president came on today and said something along the lines of that the SNAP benefits will not be getting paid, even though USDA, I think, was told by a judge the other day they had to pay out 50% of SNAP benefits. And so who knows what that even means at this point? Like, I wish I was a little bit more knowledgeable around everything, but that is what I do know. And I guess that is really nothing at this point. So that's kind of where we're sitting. So we're sitting at day 35, which is going to be tied for the longest in history. And keep in mind, the last longest one that we're tied for right now was around the border wall, and the one before that was Obamacare. So coincidentally, we're sitting at the soon to be the longest government shutdown. This thing does not pass today, around Obamacare as well as the other funding bills. So we'll see what this kind of shakes out to be. So let's jump into some real estate stuff, though. And specifically, let's do this one. This one came out on November 3rd. And so what do we have right here? We have the real estate agent still holding the line on commissions. Mystery shopper reports find. All right, so it says Consumer Policy Center mystery shopper interviews show widespread uniformity in commission rates and a resistance to negotiating, which I find that was kind of interesting, right? So we look at this thing, and if you kind of look through it, and so it's going through. It says a little over 2 years have passed since the Missouri jury found the real estate industry liable for colluding to artificially inflate real estate commissions. And the verdict that triggered a series of events which led many inside and outside of the industry to predict that there would be an increase in negotiations surrounding agent commission. Now, here's the deal. What do we know about the commission lawsuit? Because let's just go down to that road. The commission lawsuit, two things really happened. We'll call it nationwide, then we'll back it out. Nationwide, the very first thing on all the MLSs, nationwide, the blanket offer of compensation has been removed. All right, so what that means that you, the real estate agent, in the confidential remarks section, would go into the MLS and it would say that the list side of things is open to paying the co-op X% of compensation. All right, so that has been removed, and it said, hey, with that practice has artificially kept real estate commissions non-negotiable because they're being negotiated for the other side before we even get to the negotiations. They were saying that the listing agent was going forward and negotiating with their party and saying, hey, we should offer X amount of dollars in compensation and let everyone know that's about to show the house what we're willing to do. And so nationwide, that box has now been removed. And you guys know, as real estate agents, that you're not allowed to put anything in the MLS that would point to a compensation, right? Outside of concessions that are not directly linked to paying the real estate agent, you are not allowed to put anything in the MLS. The other thing that every state, except for one, the state that you live in, Colorado, has to go through and has essentially a touring agreement. All right. So what this touring agreement says is that, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, just want to let you know that you owe me compensation for my job before they even go and they unlock a door. Well, Marshall Waters in the state of Colorado said, hey, listen, there's this provision inside of this agreement that says, unless this violates state law, these are the rules. Well, she said, well, hey, this violates our state law. State law says that we in Colorado, we can be called transaction brokers, right? Without a signed agency agreement, by default, you are a transaction broker, which means no agency, no fiduciary. You're not giving advice. You are tour guide Barbie. You are going through, you're unlocking doors. You're saying, look, there is a pretty house here. And they say, well, what do you think the value is? And you're like, hey, I'm a transaction broker. So what's happened since then? Well, a lot of people have gone through and they try to figure out, has this really changed the world? And what they're finding is no. And so we've seen reports in the past, the last couple months, and where this information comes from, it's polling real estate agents for the most part. And it's polling real estate agents saying, hey, what are you charging? And so they're polling the real estate agents. And what they found is that there has not been a significant decrease, if a decrease at all, in real estate compensation. Then what they did was they actually looked at price point. And the only real price point that they saw really any movement was the luxury price point. Luxury price point, the dollars have come down a little bit, but for the most part, they've all stood tall, which I think is what triggered this. And so they said between July and September of this year, this organization, the Consumer Policy Center, went through and they did some mystery shopping. And their mystery shopping was truly, they called 281 active buyer agents and they did phone interviews. And this is what it was. I said, hey, my spouse and I are thinking about moving into the area and just wanted to see what your commission is. And then the real estate agent would say, my commission is X amount percent. And they would say, hey, is there any room for negotiations? And they said that the buyer's agent made the negotiation really, really difficult. All right. So that's where it came through. And it says, hey, they actually made it really, really difficult. It says that buyers who try to do so are met with a barrage of arguments, stating with the statement that negotiation was not necessary because sellers pay the buyer commission. So first and foremost, guys, I need everyone on this call to understand that that is against the law. All right. We are not allowed to do that. You are not allowed to go out and say, firstly, that state law requires me to have a buyer agency agreement. In the state of Colorado, that's not true. Every other state, yes. In the state of Colorado, no. And secondly, you cannot say, hey, I am free. The seller is going to pay for me. We are absolutely not allowed to say that. All right. So we're going through, and I just want you all to be aware that this, guys, firstly, while the lawsuit has gone through and that the brokerages got nailed pretty substantially, the next iteration of this is that that's a blanket cover. All right. So all of you were covered by that. All right. To where the brokerages, Gary Keller got out his checkbook and stroke a check. But if you guys make a statement like this and you guys get in front of a judge, you're not going to win. All right. This is something where your E&O insurance is not going to cover you either. All right. So when we're going through and we're thinking about this stuff, we cannot be using language like that. You need to be going through and you need to stand tall on what your compensation is. So it kind of goes through and it says, among the agents who said they'd be willing to take a lower rate, nearly 1/3 say that they accept a cut of at least 1%. Okay, so the ones that did say, yes, I'd be willing to take a rate cut on what I believe that I'm worth at up to 1%. Now, what's kind of interesting is most agents quoting rates below this level were from the Boston area, but they said most were between 2.5% to 3%. All right, so they're talking over the different agents, the 280 plus agents that they spoke to. They were somewhere between 2.5% to 3%. Well, let's scroll down, and here's Denver right here. And so they landed on 10 people that they had a conversation with over the phone, according to this chart. 7 of the agents that they talked to over the phone landed between 2.6 and 2.9%, with 3 agents landing at 3%. All right. So what this shows us is the Colorado real estate agents are somewhere between 2.6 and 3%, is at least the ones that they talk to over the phone. And so when it goes through and we're looking at this, they said, well, hey, look, it looks like we're still lined up across these regions where agents are sitting at the same commission percentage. And honestly, my thoughts on it are this. If this was 2021, I think that the commission lawsuit would have had larger implications. And what I mean by that is that we were in a seller's market. The seller's market, what were sellers looking for? They were looking to net the same amount, the most amount of money, which they still are. There's no difference there. But yet the buyer pool has been significantly decreased. And so what is happening? Well, we have less buyers that are entering into the space to take inventory offline. And so sellers are still apt to paying a buyer agent commission because they are trying to lessen the financial burden on the buyer to get their house sold. Because keep in mind this, where does that money come from? That money does not come from the loan. That money does not come from the lender. That money would have to be money that the buyer has in their bank account. And so they're sitting with a buyer's agent and they're saying, hey, buyer's agent, what's your percentage? The buyer's agent's saying X. And they're going through and they're signing an agreement. Well, inside of our contract to buy and sell, there's 3 different boxes to check, right? There's a box that says the seller's agency is going to pay. There's a box that says the seller is going to pay, and then there's a box that says the seller's brokerage is going to pay, right? There's one of those 3 boxes that we're going to go through. And so when we're going through and we're looking at these different things, we're going to go in and we're going to have these conversations. All right. So our contract to buy and sell has 3 different mechanisms that say, hey, buyer's going to pay, the seller's agency and or brokerage is going to pay, or the seller's going to pay. It's going to be one of those 3 boxes that gets checked. Well, what we are seeing is that the less people that are coming online, that are in the space, that are purchasing property, are going in and they are strapped a little bit more for cash because the cost of borrowing money is higher than what it was. And so the sellers are going through and they're offering to pay. Well, here's the deal. It says more class action litigation. It says the continuation of near uniform commission rates. And it's going through, it says this might still be evidence of price fixing. And there will be continuing public criticism, and eventually there will be more class action litigation. Well, here's the deal. I don't know if there's necessarily going to be class action litigation because agents are not being coached to say the trigger words that were put on the stand that said, no, they were being coached to say the seller will pay my commission. We're absolutely being told at this point that that is not the conversation. The conversation is, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, this is my commission. And then we're going through and we're putting it on paper, we're documenting it, right? Statute of frauds, it's on paper. And then we're going out and we have the ability to enter into the contract to buy and sell, at least in the state of Colorado, to negotiate and to pull our commission one of 3 different ways. It says when it comes to the buyer broker agreement, which were made mandatory by the terms of NAR settlement in every state but Colorado, it says a number of agents ignore the requirement to have a contract signed. Now, guys, this could be one of the things that gets the settlement reopened back up again. And again, it's going to come down to what? Just like when we look at E&O. Guys, when we look at E&O claims, what they do, if anyone's curious, is they go through and they say, awesome, agent, show us your paperwork. And you go through and you show all your paperwork, all your documentation, all the communication that you have, and you present that. Then they say, brokerage, what kind of support and training were you giving to that agent? And they said, well, here's all the training. Here's any of the communication that we've had about anything around this subject. And it gets submitted. And then what they do is they go through and they say, awesome, We think it's 50% the agent's fault, 50% the brokerage's fault. Doesn't matter, your deductible's still the same. Or they go through and they said, actually, we don't think that the brokerage really did anything. We still need to pay the deductible, but none of the dollars are coming out of the brokerage side of things. It all comes out of the agents. But again, it's still your deductible. And that's how they do everything. So I think what they're going to go through here is they're going to say, well, what kind of training is happening? Are you going through and you coaching agents about the conversations that they can and cannot have and the rules and responsibilities? So guys, I know I just lived a very long time, 15 minutes on this section. And yet I think this is very, very important. Commissions, the conversations are between you and your client. We cannot ever say that the seller's going to pay us. Now, that is our hope. We can say, historically speaking, we can do a lot of different things to where we can point to what has happened. And yet you can never guarantee your clients that they do not have to pay you because someone else will. All right, let's shift gears. Let's talk about first-time home buyers. It says this is the lowest age or the lowest record low of how many first-time home buyers have come online purchasing a house, and the age is a record high. So if you look at this, it says the share of first-time home buyers with children under 18 fell to a record low of 24%. So the first-time home buyers fell to a historic low of 21% of all U.S. home buyers purchases this year. And this was done by the National Association of Realtors. And it says the share has been cut in half since 2007. And what we're also looking is it says median first-time home buyer age is up to 40. All right, so firstly, let's look at this. Let's talk about the median, right? So we look at median, we look at the outliers, and we work our way into the middle. This says the children and the old of the old. And we're just working our way in, and we are saying that the median, the middle number, 40 years old. Well, guys, when we think about this, and we think about the American dream, that is wild to think about. All right, we're saying 40-year-olds are the ones that are making up the first-time home buyer demographic right now. And it's also going through and it's saying that that first-time home buyer demographic, which is 40, is only 21% of all the purchases that are happening in the United States. That's how I would interpret it. Now, we can interpret it a little bit different. But with that being said, this would be my call to action for everyone. The people that are in your sphere of influence, in your demographics, your marketing channels, where are they being aimed right now? Right? If we're going through and we're thinking about where do the millennials live, and I don't mean their parents' basements and eating avocado toast, but I really mean like where are the marketing channels that we're looking at? How are we going to get in front of that demographic of your not your oldest millennial, but it's an older millennial at this point is what this is saying. Your older millennials are making up 21% of the purchases, which is a record low. And so we're going through and I would ask everyone, like, what are you doing to get in front of these people? And so then we're saying, it says this historically low share of first-time homebuyers underscores the real-world consequences of the housing market starved for affordable inventory. And absolutely, guys, we have an affordability issue. The American dream is not dead. It's just that we have an affordability issue. When you look, especially in Colorado, we're disproportionately affected. We have a price point of $600,000. You couple that with a 6% interest rate, and we have more people that are not able to pursue the American dream and go purchase a house. Now it says the share of first-time homebuyers in the market has contracted by 50% since 2007. Yep. Okay, cool. So we went from 40% down to 20% is what this is saying, right before the Great Recession. The implications for the housing market are staggering. Yes, they are. Unfolding in the housing market is a tale of two cities. We're seeing buyers with significant housing equity making larger down payments and all cash offers while first-time home buyers continue to struggle. And so we look at this. And so one of the things I think about is we look at, where most millionaires are made, historically speaking, and it's through real estate. And so when we're going in and we're seeing all these debates where these people are saying, well, hey, real estate is not the best investment. And then yet we're seeing that the people that are actually out there being able to go purchase more houses or to be able to go cash offers are the ones that already owned real estate. Well, I think that's a great time for a conversation. Yes, you could be making more cash on cash return in the stock market, but then how are you reinvesting that money? So when I think about real estate, okay, cool. We might see bigger returns on your Pokemon collection or your Air Jordan collection or insert whatever here, your 401k. And yet, what we know about real estate is that I got to continue to put that money into that account because if the money stops going into that account is now going to be gone. And so it's a safe haven to where you're dropping it in there. I'm not saying that life can't happen and someone can't take that house away from you through a foreclosure process or through eminent domain or through any of that kind of stuff. But yet, this is clearly pointing to you have to at least get on that track and then you have more equity. Leads to more houses or a bigger house or to upsizing. And the people that don't even start are the people that are disproportionately affected when they start to raise their hand. All right. So we're going over here. It says overall 92% of first time home buyers use financing compared to 70% of the repeat buyers. Not a huge swing. But if we look at this, this is saying that the people that are just starting are actually, they don't have a whole lot of money. They don't have a lot of money saved. So yeah, your cash on cash returns on your stock market and anything else, yes. But what this is saying is actually the people that are just starting buying their first house are actually having to get more financing tools because they actually don't have a lot of money. It says among first time home buyers, 59% use personal savings and 26% drew from financial assets such as their 401k or stock. So even though they had it, they had to cash in on that stuff. So they're going through, they went down a different path. They said, I'm going to actually just put this in a 401k. And then what are they having to do? They're having to pull that money out. Whether they had to completely divest and take a big financial hit because, again, 40 years old does not meet the requirement without penalty. And so we're going through for the 40 or for the 21% of all buyers, the main reason for purchasing was the desire to own their first home. A figure that jumped to 64% of all first-time home buyers. So guys, as we're looking at this thing and we're thinking about this, where my mind goes is just this. What are the channels that we're using to get in front of as many 40-year-olds as possible? Yeah, these numbers are saddening and frustrating to look at, right? When you think about this. And what this also tells me is that when we have this affordability issue, what we don't know, but if we had our crystal ball and we're looking in our crystal ball and we shook it like a magic 8 ball for some reason, and we shake it and we look at it, and then the only thing that we do know in 2026 is Jerome Powell will no longer be the decision maker in the face of the Fed. And so we shake our crystal ball and it says maybe. And that maybe is going to point to what? That maybe is going to point to we could see the policy change to where interest rates do come down. And yes, inflation will rise, which means that it will kind of mimic 2021, probably not to that like extreme, but home prices will probably come up, but yet it'll be significantly more affordable. And the reason why I say that is this. The president is the one that gets to tap the Fed chair president. And so whoever the president's going to choose, what we know from past appointments is that that person's going to align with his policy. Now, the Senate still has to approve them. And yet, what we have to believe that the president is going to choose a sitting Fed president that is going to align with his policy. And his policy is to make the cost of money more affordable. And so all we can do is wait and have conversations. Our job is to find them motivated, right? That's what we're looking to do. We're having as many conversations, especially now, holidays coming up. Guess what your next holiday? To my knowledge is Thanksgiving, unless there's some obscure holiday that I'm not thinking of that is somewhere between now and then. And we have so many reasons to be reaching out to people and having conversations and doing different things and to be that real estate economist of choice. But then we look at this, and this gets a little bit more interesting. So Zillow came through and they updated their regional rankings. All right. So Zillow came through on Thursday of last week, and they updated what they actually thought about their housing markets. And so if we look at this, what they're going to say is they're going to say, we're going to be across the board a neutral market. All right. So we go through here and we can see, seller's market, buyer's market. Here's your 2021 into a lot of 2022 seller's market. Higher interest rates have forced us down here. And now we just have open weight and affordability issue, neutral market. Still not a buyer's market though, because there's not enough inventory on the board still. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit so this can be seen. All right. So let's go a little bit more. Here is your geography lesson for the day. You are the square. This is your square. All right. And so if we were to look at this, kind of like here-ish is where Jefferson County is. All right. We're somewhere kind of in here. And so when we look at this, let's scroll down. This is 2019. So what was 2019 saying? That we were kind of like in a slightly neutral to seller's market, right? We can kind of see that right in here with that purple to orange. We go down to 2020. Well, we got a seller's market. All right. You guys are in a high seller's market. Then we go through a little bit more. 2021, we're in a seller's market. Then we go through, and guys, I'm just doing the Denver Metro for the most part, Jefferson County. Then we're going in here and we're getting back to a neutral market, right? 2022, we understood that interest rates went up fast. It's not the highest they've ever been. It's just the quickness that they went up scared a lot of people. And we went into this balanced market, right? That's your purple. 2023, we're still in Colorado. Now it's saying slightly more of a buyer's market, right? We're seeing the color change here. Then we get into 2024, we're back to a balanced market. And we get into 2025, still in this balanced market. There's a little bit over here in this like Clear Creek area-ish, maybe Eagle Summit, kind of where it's blue. And so when we're looking at this, guys, what this is saying is that it believes that we're kind of in this balanced market still. And so with our balanced market, all we are doing is going through and we're just having the conversations. We have to go through and just think about the shift book, right? So we're looking at Gary Keller's shift book right down there. And so our job in this type of market is go find the motivated. If we're going to look at this next article, and I think it's kind of important because it reads the housing turnover is at a 30-year low. And it shows that the real estate market is in a deep freeze. All right. I think this plays off the last one, but it says the number of homes changing hands in the US is at a multi-decade low. It then goes on to say the turnover rate for the US homes dropped to its lowest level in at least 30 years. And it's saying that's partially due to the market rates lock problem, with sellers still clinging to low mortgage rates. All right. There's 3 bullet points. Let's break this thing down. So when we look at your bullet point number 3, this is talking about the golden handcuffs. All right. So this story, the golden handcuffs, we started seeing it at the end of 2022 and then 23. And what the golden handcuffs was saying was this: 2 and 3% interest rates, no one's going to sell their house because they're never going to see an interest rate like that again. That was a gift from God. That was the premise. No one will ever sell their house because they have a 2 or 3% interest rate and they will never get it again. So they're going to live in that house for forever. Well, then what did we see? We saw that wasn't the case because we also saw people refinancing. We saw all kinds of stuff. We saw everyone get to that 2 or 3% if they possibly could. They did it through refinancing and or going in and purchasing a new home. Well, guess what? You're all real estate agents in here, and there is people on this call that have bought and sold real estate, either for yourself and or for your clients in the last couple of years and or months. And so the golden handcuffs, we just proved it. Now, it doesn't mean that there's still people that are living in their home, but this is what it tells me more so than it's the golden handcuffs. It means that another home has not popped up that has made their life significantly better by making the switch. And what I mean by that is we talk about the motivated. Well, why are people motivated to buy and or sell real estate? Because of a different change in their life. A life event happens, and that's why people buy and or sell. Now, here's the deal. That's not what we were seeing in 2021. We saw that interest rates were super low, money was free, and so people were just buying houses. People were literally moving into the house across the street because they wanted a different view. And that's literally what we were seeing. And that has no longer the case. But yet that was an anomaly, right? That was not something that was truly in the historical characteristics of buyers buying and sellers selling. That was just a consequence, a thing that happened because of the interest rates being as low as they were. But now we're going through and it's back to our roots. And we think about the shift book. Gary Keller is going to tell us that we need to go find the motivated. We need to be having the conversations. We need to be going out and figuring out what life events are happening to our people. And here's what we do know. Every 3 to 7 years, historically speaking, is when people buy and sell houses, right? We just think of this like roller coaster. All right. It ebbs and it flows. And every 3 to 7 years, someone raises their hand and they move. But here's the deal. It's a life event. It's a life event that is being triggered, which is why someone is making that. And yet here's the deal. People get jobs. People lose jobs. People have increase in families. People have decreases in families, right? Whether they're going off to school, they're going off to college, they're moving, they're buying their own house, right? We go back and make fun of millennials a little bit. They're getting out of the basement, right? Whatever that looks like. But yet you don't know what the motivating factor is unless we're having the conversations with those people. And so when we're seeing all this, yes, I would say that we are probably seeing some kind of lock-in effect for our elderly that have a $0 a month payment outside of the cost of utilities and everything else, to where it doesn't make sense for them to downsize. Right? It probably doesn't make sense for them to downside. And yet that's what we would have seen in the past is we would have said that people got married, they had babies, they needed a bigger house, and they bought a bigger house and they bought it from the elderly that were going to downsize into a different life. But now we're not seeing that downsize as much, right? Because with the cost of everything that's happening, it doesn't make sense for them to do it. Yes, the house is way too big for me, but yet it's affordable because I don't owe a payment. So I'm just going to stay here. And this is why we haven't seen prices crash, is because there's not enough inventory on the board. People are sitting on their home. They're not making the moves that they're making. And so we have these people that would typically be trying to get rid of their homes, and they're not. They're staying in them. And so that's why we're seeing with interest rates that have risen and not, we haven't seen as many houses come on the board. That's why prices have not crashed in the United States, and they won't. There is no indication that we're going to see any major price decreases. And so what we do need is more inventory, and we're going to see that, right, as we look through this. So Logan Motoshami, mortgage spreads hit lowest level in years. And it says this is what's keeping rates near 6%. It says better mortgage spreads are the only reason why mortgage rates are near 6%. It says in 2025, improved mortgage spreads have played a crucial role in reducing mortgage rates near 6%, supporting the market despite recent volatility in the housing data because of holidays and Amazon, right? Their servers went down. It says the overall trend remains positive with the stable inventory and purchase application growth. All right. We're not going to talk about spreads. We're not going to talk about the 10-year yield, but let's look at purchase application data. Well, this is interesting. So we look at this, guys. Again, this is how we have to look at this. This is 2025. This is 2024. Even if this thing starts ticking downward, the thing that I want everyone to keep in their mind is it's still more than last year. There could be a downward trend. And if we're not crossing over the 2024 line, that still means there's more people in 2025 versus 2024 that are going out and raising their hand and talking to a lender to feel out what they qualify for. But what's interesting is that we saw seasonality in 2024 right here tick down, but we actually saw an uptick this year. Guys, it's November. You're supposed to be sleeping. You're supposed to be a jack-o'-lantern going to go hibernate, and we were not supposed to see you until you wake up as an Easter bunny. And yet, when we look at this, the seasonality of our market has changed significantly. Yes, there are still people that believe buying in the springtime and doing all these different things, but yet what do we have? We have motivated buyers. We have motivated sellers. Those are the players that are coming online and going offline right now. Those are the people that a major life event is either making them sell their house and or buy a house currently. The trends that we've historically seen are completely out the window. There is no seasonality that is truly dictating what is happening in our market right now. It is truly the motivated. And that's why it's our job to go have as many conversations as we possibly can. So we look at this, again, this could be refinances. And while this might make sense for most people, that's not the majority of our population. And so, guys, what you don't want to do is you don't want to get into January 1st and see that your buddy post on Facebook that they have great news that they just put a house under contract and they're moving in another month and they didn't use you. What this is telling me is people are talking to lenders. They're figuring out what they're qualifying for to make a purchase over the next couple of months. Don't let it be one of your people. There's nothing more devastating than finding out that they spoke to a lender. That lender referred someone that was not you. We need to get back into relationship with the people that are in our ecosystems. Here's your inventory. 45% more inventory right now than there was last year. Guys, that's huge, right? As we're looking at this thing, here you are, we are going to intersect 2019. And this is why I don't think this is a big deal as far as we have so much inventory, our price is going to drop. We also have a giant population. Our population, guys, in the United States grows every year. And I understand that people are having less babies, but yet we have some of the loosest immigration policy in the world. And no, I'm not making these are illegal immigrants coming in. I mean, like if you were to look at us versus Japan, and Japan, when they're coming through, you do not have immigration into Japan, right? You're not going and migrating into Japan without going through a lot of red tape. It's easier to migrate into the United States legally and to become a citizen, and our population just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And so even with all these homes, our population's still bigger than what it was in 2019. All right, so we have a bigger population than 2019, and we have less homes on the market. This is also another reason why home prices have not just blown up and why we're not going to see a housing crash. All right, these are the things that we're looking at. So we go through new listing data, and it's right here. So we're right in the mix. We see some seasonality right here. So nothing crazy. We go through here. Here's your weekly pending. Yep, we're still in the seasonality of some stuff. And it says, what should we be looking out for? It says, there's no jobs week. We do have some manufacturing data and some Fed speeches coming through. He says, usually I would say it's jobs week. However, until the government shutdown is over, we have no government data to discuss. And we don't. A lot of the information that we truly look at is sidelined right now because of this government shutdown. It says we have some Fed speeches scheduled for Friday. Here's the deal. Unless the Fed gets with it, like these things truly fluctuate what happens with our interest rates. It goes up, it goes down, and it is really determined a lot on what the Fed presidents say. It says Fed speeches scheduled on Friday, during which a host of very hawkish Fed members are expected to say they will not support Fed rate cuts. And so that's going to scare some people, and then we're going to see some weirdness happen. It says Sarah, this is Sarah Wheeler, and I, Logan Moshami, talk about this on the podcast that goes live on Monday, right? This came out on Friday, so he's talking about this for yesterday. It says we do have sufficient private data to indicate that the labor market hasn't worsened, but we will see. And so, guys, this is where we're at. We have a job loss recession Fed. All right, so we have this dual mandate. And this dual mandate is to make sure that we're going through, we're keeping people employed, and we're keeping the inflation down. Impossible. And so what happens is they were saying this whole time that we were just truly get inflation down. Well, inflation did get down, but then what did we see? We started seeing people start losing their jobs. And when we think about this, the reason why this is because we have companies, for-profit companies, which all companies are, and they have two ways where they can go through and they can increase profit with two different expenses. One expense is leases. Well, it's very hard to get out of a lease, especially now, more so than ever, because no landlords are letting people out of leases right now because they can't. There's no one's knocking down their door to take over that lease. And the second one is salaries, employment. And that's the easier one. That's the easier lever to pull. And so what happens is they go through, they cut jobs, and we're seeing that. We're seeing jobs get caught, which that money comes down and then profitability goes up. And that's just the world that we live in. Now, here's the deal. With a job loss recession fed, we have to realize that as real estate agents, we are disproportionately affected when the cost of money goes up. We deal with the highest ticketed price tag that most Americans go out and buy. Real estate, especially in Colorado, $600 price tag. And so what happens is we say, hey, the cost of money is going up. It's going to be less affordable to go purchase a house. And we see people go on the sidelines, right? We talk about this housing recession, which isn't real, but it's a thing. We're going to housing recession. And so we go through, and then what happens? Well, the Fed's doing what the Fed's doing. People are starting to losing their jobs, which none of us want. Super anti-American for anyone on this call to be cheering for that to happen. But what does happen is this: when people start to lose their jobs, the Fed goes into a panic. And what do? They start lowering the cost of money. They start lowering the cost of money because that stimulates the economy. And now people start to expand and they hire more people to build more widgets, to sell more stuff, to make more money. Well, what else does that do? Well, that number is also attached to the number for when people go to purchase real estate. Those numbers are correlated. So the cost of money starts going down. We start to see more people raise their hand to go buy real estate. And that's when your guys' businesses actually really start to explode at that point, because the cost of money, the cost of purchasing a house is now more affordable, and we see more people raise their hand. So we'll continue to watch all this, guys. I think the biggest thing that we're just waiting for at this point is the government to reopen, right? We do not know the long-term implications of what will happen with everything that is happening with the Fed. We'll continue to monitor it. I feel like every week I tell you guys there's some kind of economist that's smarter than me that's talking about the Fed's going to open or the government's going to open this week, and then it doesn't. I also read another article where it said the pollster just went through and believes that the government's going to open this week. Who knows? We don't know. All we can do at this point is we're in the season of renewal. We need to be going through with all these natural touch points to have conversations with our people to see how they're doing. And those conversations are going to lead into real estate. And whether it's in the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 6 months from now, all we need to do is make sure that they understand that we're here for them, that we care for them. And I promise you, your businesses are going to look significantly different, especially if our prediction comes true about interest rates coming down in 2026.